Right, let's examine what we've revealed so far with our panel. Now, we've presented a group of analysts. Each of them has a specific interest and expertise in topics covered by the Palestine Papers. Joining us are Shlomo Ben Ami, the former Israeli Foreign Minister and Minister of Internal Security, Dr. Daud Abdullah, Director of the Middle East Monitor, and Ali Abunimah, the co-founder of the Electronic Intifada. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us. You've all had time now to study the papers. Ali, what do you make of them? What's the significance?
I think these papers are really dynamite. There's a big difference between thinking you know something and actually knowing it. And these papers put us in the room with the top officials, with George Mitchell, with Saeb Erekat, with Tzipi Livni, with General Keith Dayton, with many, many others. And what we see, particularly with respect to Jerusalem, is we see, from a Palestinian perspective, a Palestinian leadership that has no mandate, that has lost its mandate, making concessions on fundamental issues. And I think these papers blow the cover off these so-called negotiations. I think it's time for the charade to end. After today, there should be no more secret dealings behind the backs of the Palestinian people.
Dr. Daud Abdullah, given that, what do you think the reaction to what we've revealed so far will be in the wider Muslim world?
I think it will be one of outrage and deep revulsion with the action of the Palestinian negotiators. It was not just Yasser Arafat who refused to concede on Jerusalem. If we go back to the early history of the conflict, Abdul Hamid II of Turkey, he said it was easier to put a dagger into my heart and turn it before I compromise on Jerusalem. So there's a long history, and indeed these are the first who have, taken it upon themselves to make such concessions. The point is, these are the individuals who are supposed to be the guardians, the custodians of Muslim interest in Palestine. And we've seen them make decisions in a very cavalier and flippant manner, giving the maximum, as it were, concessions and receiving nothing in return. At a time when significant sections of Islamic sanctuaries in Jerusalem have been destroyed. We're speaking about cemeteries that go back hundreds of years, systematically being destroyed by the occupation. And what we are faced with at the moment is an attempt to legalize, to impose an element of legitimacy on what is done against the sites of the Muslims and Christians indeed in Jerusalem.
Shlomo Ben Ami, as Saeb Erekat says, according to the Palestine Papers, the biggest Jerusalem in history. What more can I give? And yet it still wasn't good enough to secure a deal. What would have been good enough for Israel?
Well, I think that these positions as expressed in these papers, most of them are not new to me. These positions were more or less the positions the Palestinians agreed to at after Camp David, that is through the Clinton peace parameters, and Intaba, that is the division of Jerusalem along ethnic lines, not east-west, but rather what is Jewish is Israeli and what is Arab is Palestinian.
So has anything in the Palestinian negotiating line changed since Camp David?
The most radical shift that I see here is in the question of the Haram al-Sharif. Arafat was adamant when he asked for full and unconditional sovereignty on the Haram, on Temple Mount, and whereas here Saeb Erekat is ready to advance creative ideas, and I sense that the ideas he is trying to toy with are ideas that we discussed through Clinton, that is some kind of international committee that would oversee or be the custodian of the Haram. So I think that is essentially because the Jewish neighborhoods in East Jerusalem were given to Israel's sovereignty under the Clinton peace parameters, and the Palestinians, as far as I know, did not object to that. Ma'ale Adumim, they never thought that it should be part of Jerusalem. And the position of Condoleezza Rice here goes in the line of the position of Israel. So I frankly do not think that there is a radical shift in this paper when it comes to Jerusalem, compared with what I know of the position of the Palestinians when I was negotiating on behalf of Israel.
Ali Abunimah.
Well, Mr. Ben Ami says that it's not new to him, but he was involved in the secret negotiations. What's new to the public, and to the Palestinian public in particular, is that we have a Palestinian leadership that was raising protests all the time over Israeli settlement construction in public, while in private they were telling the Israelis, we're going to give you basically all the settlements except for Ma'ale Adumim and what the Israelis call Ha-Homa. So, and then when it comes to the Haram, what we've got to understand here is this is really about the very existence of the Muslim holy sites, because what we have to remember is that as we speak, there are Israeli groups closely linked to the Israeli government that are actively and openly planning for the destruction of the Muslim holy sites in Jerusalem and their replacement with what they call a third Jewish temple. These are plans that are being made in the open. So when we talk about sovereignty over the Haram al-Sharif, this isn't an amusement park.
Well, we offered sovereignty to the Palestinians on the Haram through the Clinton peace parameters, and we agreed to that. The concept that the president advanced was that Israel will have sovereignty on the Wailing Wall, whereas the Palestinians will have sovereignty on the Haram. So that was already there. Yeah. There was nothing new. And as to groups in Israel that advocate the destruction of the temple and building a Jewish temple, there might be such people, but really, I mean, we are talking about the lunatic fringes of Israeli society.
Yes, Kohanim, all of these groups are working.
But these are the lunatic fringes,
no,
trust me.
They are working right now, and this is what I think people have to understand, is that the groups like Elad and Ateret Kohanim and others that are actively involved in the ethnic cleansing of Jerusalem neighborhoods like Sheikh Jarrah and Silwan and others are working hand in glove with the Israeli government. The Israeli government tries to say, well, these are just fringe groups, when in fact they're helping them. This is why it's such a fundamental issue. We're talking about the gravest danger to Jerusalem.
Gentlemen, before I have a feeling we're running ahead of ourselves here. We're going to talk in greater detail about particularly the Haram in a few moments.